one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin our hearing this evening, I want to inform the members of the public that one of our most loyal board members and former chair, Ned Robertson, decided to step down and finally retire from the board. So he's no longer a member of the board, but I want to share just a bit of Ned's devotion to this city. Attorney Ned Robertson was a city solicitor for at least 10 years. Before he was city solicitor, he was a member of the city council for several terms. And I had the pleasure of serving with him on this board for, how long has it been, Danny?
Almost 20 years now.
Okay, almost 20 years, that's scary, but even scarier than that is that Ned had been a member and chair of this board for probably 15 or 20 years before that. I was always amazed at his ability to address people by name. He just had this uncanny knack that I thought was so respectful, and I learned so much from him over the years. And it's sad for me that he's no longer here, but I'm glad for him because I know it was kind of, it's getting kind of old. So he has stepped down, but I definitely want to acknowledge all of the contributions that he has made to this city for really decades upon decades. And I hope that we all have some like smidgen of devotion to the city that Ned Robertson had. We are down a member. I had anticipated being able to welcome a new member to the zoning board this evening. Ann Chatfield has been approved, but for unforeseen circumstances happened today that she was unable to be sworn in. So we're down a member, which means that alternate member Kavicki was going to be voting on all of the matters that are on the agenda this evening. So thank you for letting me pontificate, and without further ado, I'm going to call the first item on the agenda. This is the petition of Dreeton and Maria Zecco, 52 Montvale Avenue. This is a continuation from last month. The petition involves a request for a special permit to put an addition on a pre-existing non-conforming home.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman. For the record, Attorney James Giuliano on behalf of Maria and Darquin Zecco, homeowners located at 52 Montville Ave. If you remember correctly, we were here for the application of a special permit last meeting for the addition of a story, as we'll put it. There were some questions that we were getting answers to that I believe I supplied to the board probably a couple weeks ago. Those were the following. The biggest one being the basement. There was a question as to whether the basement was considered a story. We did have Ed Farrell do some grades at the four corners of the home. Got those from Mr. Farrell, sent those to Tommy Quinn. Tom Quinn confirmed that with the median slope that this is not considered a story. Couldn't get anything in writing. Hopefully somebody corroborated that, but that was the consensus when I did speak to Mr. Quinn on that. The other issues were I think we were supposed to show the cathedral ceiling, which we provided in an additional enlarged plan of the architecturals per the board's request. And the other addition was the rear window. I guess there was a rear window missing from the rear elevation. I think the right-handed window was missing that was added to the plan. Based on that, I'll certainly entertain any questions on what we provided in between the last meeting and this meeting, but I just wanted to point out that we did provide everything.
Thank you, and thank you for submitting that well in advance of the hearing, because that also gave me the opportunity to review the detail that you had submitted, or that Mr. Farrell had done, and discuss it with the building commissioner. And so, as I understand it, and I don't know if members of the board had reviewed this the detail that shows the relative elevations for the garage floor versus the garage ceiling and the average grade. And so when if you just took the ceiling minus the garage floor measurement, that would hit the 6 foot 6 inches that's needed for a story. But because the math involves the average grade, that brings it down below the 6 foot 6. But I do have some questions.
Sure.
So I think on both plans, the basement is just shown without any interior walls or any information. But it's also a garage. It's labeled, like the detail references it as the garage floor. And there's obviously a garage door on the side. So I find it hard to believe that there aren't any interior walls or anything, that you just drive into this open space and you park the car in an open space?
There are walls, yeah.
Okay,
So I'll bring up Maria Zako, who
Sure.
can sort of explain a little bit as to the optics of
thank you.
the
Hi.
basement.
Hello, everyone. So there is the garage space, there is laundry room in the basement, and there is a giant room as a playroom for kids and what have you.
Okay, so none of that's actually shown on the existing basement floor plan.
Okay.
And I know that was something that the building commissioner had questions about, and he had specifically asked, what is that being used for? And he wanted it marked and acknowledged, and I'm not casting any aspersions, but any time that we have a significant addition put on a house that's got a walkout basement with a separate door, we instantly think, oh, that's going to turn into another apartment, down in the basement. So it would be helpful if the plans actually, right, so we got something that says existing basement floor plan, and it's not the existing basement floor plan, because there are walls there, and there is a laundry room and a playroom,
Yeah.
and the garage space too. So that was one thing that I had wanted to communicate. And I apologize, I'm not as
No.
organized tonight as I usually
I'll give you
am.
some time, too. And on that, I guess if, I know where you're going. If the board wishes to put a restriction in the special permit, we're certainly amenable to that restriction, that it won't be used as an apartment or anything of that sort, so.
All right, so one of the things that I think is really challenging for this is that when you look at the proposed rear facade, so even if we accept that the basement is not a story, because the math works out, within inches of it not being a story.
Yep.
When you look at the back of this building, it's a 3-story building with a full basement. So it actually looks like, a 3.5-story building. And I'm wondering how we square that with the provision in the code that talks about, 2.5 stories.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would just go back to, what a definition of a half a story, and going back to Ellen's memorandum from a few years back, and as long as, we're within the height restriction, I think that's, according to Ellen, that's significant enough for the board to render a decision, regardless of if it's a half a story or not. Because if you remember correctly, what we discussed, or what I discussed at the last meeting, was that there was, the table does reference 2.5 stories, but there is no definition of a half a story. And then typically we like to look at the building code, and there's no half a story from the building code. There was a definition of a half a story from the 1934 revision of the, or excuse me, I think it was a 65 version of the building, the zoning code, and that was omitted. So there is some sort of intent there, is what I'm trying to get to, and I think I mentioned at the last meeting. And again, during that time when that provision came out, there was really not a lot of 3 stories, and 3 families, excuse me. So I think Ellen made that argument too in her memo that they were sort of independent of each other, those two things. So I would just go back to that, and I think, that we can't really say that something's not 2.5 stories when there's no definition in the zoning code as to what that really means. As long as we're below the height restriction, I think that should be enough to fulfill, a special permit and the burden of a special permit.
Let me ask if any of the other members of the board have any questions or comments. Let me ask, is there anyone in the audience who cares to be heard in connection with this petition for a special permit at 52 Montvale Ave? So if the basement is not a story because of the average grade, does anybody think it's a half a story? Because if so, this is a 3.5-story building.
Well, I would argue that the basement's not a story, so you
Yeah,
can't
but
call
but
it a
is it a
story.
half a story?
Well, I don't know what a half a story is where there's no definition of a half
I
a
think
story.
it's pretty close to being a story, so I think, from my view of a common sense, that if it's almost a story, it's probably a half a story.
I guess I would ask the board respectfully, what is a half a story? If, what would be the definition of a half a story? I guess in the eyes of the board, if there's no definition of that.
It's a fair question.
I mean, just a little bit in furtherance too, as I mentioned before in the last meeting, we put dormers on houses and call them half stories, but is it really it's a livable space with a little bit of architecture.
Sure, but if a story is defined as part of a building comprised between a floor and a floor or a roof next above, including a basement, but not a cellar. So we talked last month about, the attic.
Yep.
Attic could be a story, right? So again, you look
Exactly,
at this,
yeah.
and you're looking, I'm like, this is huge in the back. It
So,
looks
yep.
towering
Yeah.
in the back.
So I would argue that if that's the definition of a story, we're going to, sort of define it that way, then every house has 3 stories because an attic is technically, under that definition, a story. It's the space between the floor and the roof or the ceiling above. So it's a story. So, how do we define these things and they become subjective without pure definitions in the zoning code?
Sure. No, and I don't disagree. But to me, I would typically think an attic, what we think of as a regular attic, would be half a story. Because if it's a regular attic, you're under the roof, you can't even stand up straight, in all parts of it.
Yep.
But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I've researched it.
It's
So, let me ask, any discussion, or how does the board wish to proceed?
Just one question. You indicated that you would be willing to designate that basement area. How? How do you define it as use going forward, or excluded use going forward?
Yeah, well, excluded use, like I mentioned, it would not be a separate living space for someone who is unrelated or anything that we would consider a second apartment. Because don't forget, it's already a 2-family structure. Adding another would be a 3-family. We would change the use. That's not good. That's not what we're looking to do. I think it would just be a bonus room for TV, and it holds a garage area, and that's really the extent of what we're looking for it to be. No more than what it is right now. And I don't think we have any problem confirming that in the special permit.
Provided we go with that stipulation, I would move that we grant the special permit.
My second.
All in favor of the pending motion? Opposed? So that passed 4-1.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
The next item on the agenda is the petition of Ramnath Chowdhury, 53B Campbell Street. in connection with the request for minor modification to a special permit. Because my name is on the abutters list, in accordance with the city solicitor's advice, I recused myself last time this was before us, and I will again recuse myself. And I want to thank Member Parrish for agreeing to be the acting chair during the recusal period.
All righty, next item on the agenda is Ramath Shami of 53B Campbell Street. Excuse me, petitioner and landowner requesting a minor modification to a special permit we granted back in June of 2023. And good evening.
Good evening.
If you could just state what we granted you back then and what your minor change is now, I think it would help this board.
Just to introduce myself first, Abdul Khalil. I'm project manager that Mr. Ram reached out to me.
And forgive me, if you, your name and address for the record too. Sorry.
Abdul Khalil, 66 Endicott Street, Quincy. I'm
Thank you,
with
sir.
View Contracting. We're currently took the remedial work proposed for the committee. I understand that the committee already under the impression that the second floor level was built not to the proposed, the first, per the original plans, the proposed height. Mr. Ram did propose remedial work to fix the issue occurred at the stairs from the elevation difference, which was submitted, I think, a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
And if you can see on the right side, this is the proposed remedial work plan, which will extend the stairs coming from the ground floor to the first floor to meet the code.
So was this just internally? Or
That's
was-
just internally.
It was just an internal change? There was nothing dimensionally on the outside?
Nothing.
You're not getting any closer to the lot lines, or,
No altercation to any square footage of the,
that's all it was?
yep,
huh?
it was,
Would anyone else in this audience like to speak on this issue, for or against? Any comments from?
Just one, if you could please repeat, did you say the only change is a stairway from the basement to the first floor?
from the ground floor to the first floor.
That's the only change.
That's the only change.
And that was requested to meet code.
Exactly, correct.
What's the will of the board? Shall we have a motion signifying that is a minor change or minor modification?
Yeah, I'd make a motion that it is a minor modification to the special permit.
Second.
Okay, motion's made and second that it is a minor modification. All those in favor? Aye. That carries 4-0. Be all set.
Thank you very
sir.
much.
It's good seeing you again.
Thank you so much.
It's a natural. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the petition of Commonwealth Realty Foundation LLC, 200 West Cummings Park, seeking a variance to reduce the minimum lot size from 12,000 to 8,370 feet to build a single-family home at no number listed. I think in the past we've referred to it as 0 Marcy Street. Good evening.
My name is Michael Hay, the architect of Cummings Properties, representing Commonwealth Realty Foundation on behalf of Cummings Foundation. With me this evening is Mark Slager from Allen Engineering. Thanks for having us here. A brief history, as you may recall, we were here last summer seeking a variance for relief from the front yard setback requirement. At that time, based on the neighborhood's input and this board's comments during the hearing, we withdrew without prejudice. Since our last meeting, this project has been brought to the planning board, and we've had additionally, we continue to work with the neighbors to come up with a solution that may work here. The two biggest challenges for the neighborhood were that they didn't want, hold on a second, I have a problem with this not working. They didn't want Marcy Street to become a cut-through, and they didn't want the vegetated buffer that exists, okay, here we go, the vegetated buffer that exists here between the subject property, that's on the subject property that separates the property, the neighborhood from the industrial area here, and then there's a vegetated buffer here at the end of Marcy Street. They would like to see that preserved. So, after working with the planning board, the planning department, the neighborhood, we're here before you today seeking a variance for relief from the lot area from 12,000 square feet to 8,370 square feet. Additionally, and what might be a little bit unprecedented, the planning board has authorized Member Bolgen and Planning Director Tina Cassidy to come here today and share their thoughts and their efforts, their collective efforts that they shared with us to get to this point, in the event that you folks feel it's relevant to hear from them. So this is a shot of the property here, again, Erie Street, Marcy Street, Henshaw Street. This is the plan that was submitted to this board again. Ultimately, we will, we'd like to be able to turn this single property into two lots. Lot 1 would be the piece that we developed. Lot 2, which is now which makes up the buffer, will remain as a separate lot. This is basically a larger version of the lot as it exists today. This is how we'd like to break these lots up. So why are we here? Again, we'd like to construct a modest single-family home on this Lot 1 in a single-family dwelling in a residential neighborhood. To do so, we're seeking relief from the Table 5.1 from the Woburn zoning ordinance, R2 zoning district for the lot area. Today, there is a very mature evergreen buffer that runs along here, and there is a deciduous buffer that is on that's on Marcy Street. And as you'll see on the next 4 slides, I took pictures of these. You know, this is the mature buffer that we're looking to preserve. Another shot of it. So the subject property that we'd like to build a house on will be 36 feet behind that fence. Again, more shots of the buffer. This is looking down Marcy Street. And that's the buffer that would also like to be preserved there. So, we believe that the buffer that's there, the vegetated buffer, presents a unique topographical condition / feature that affects this property, but doesn't necessarily affect the zoning district. We believe that the existing of this unique topographical feature, as it affects just this area, not the whole zoning district, that this board can look at this and take that as a hardship and the unique topographical feature that makes sense to be able to grant a variance in this case. Literal enforcement of the zoning in this case creates a challenge, you know, because our collective desire the developer, the neighborhood, is to preserve the vegetated buffer that's there. And for reference, the objective here, if we were to be granted such a variance, this Lot 2 will be given to the city so that there's less chance that somebody who bought this would be able to take those trees down. Again, it'd be trespass, it'd be probably a criminal activity if they came and took the trees down. So the goal here is to separate these lots, spin off Lot 2, still build a house here. We believe that the trees in the buffer are unique. They present what is a reasonable case that relief could be granted without substantial detriment to the public good. As a matter of fact, relief in this case could be granted for the benefit of the public good, and that we could save the buffer. And it wouldn't, granting this relief wouldn't nullify or derogate from the intent or the purpose of the zoning ordinance. For record, not that this matters much, but there's three other developments, three other homes on this block. All three of them are under the 12,000 square feet. So it's kind of an example of how, there's not a deleterious effect here. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So your hardship argument is that the trees relate to the soil conditions, shape, or topography of the land.
Well, interesting you say that. So I believe that the topography also, by definition, includes natural and man-made features. And that I would make the argument that the buffer is a natural feature of this lot that's unique to this particular lot, but not all the other lots in the R2 zoning district. So yes, by definition, I would say the natural and the man-made features on this lot qualify as topography as defined by Webster's dictionary. And I think that that's what we believe presents a unique situation here.
And is there any Massachusetts case law on the argue that the trees, this buffer?
It's a great question. I
relates to the
haven't
topography?
had the opportunity to look at that. I started with the Woburn zoning and how they said there was no definition for topography, and they pushed it to the Webster's dictionary, and I felt that I had at least a good enough
Sure.
case to present.
Well, typically topography, what we usually see in terms of arguments based on topography is that there's a slope. Or, there's a bowl, or, some change in elevation. That's, topography.
I was just surprised to read that definition as well, and felt like natural and man-made features. Man-made, it's pretty interesting. But I could certainly see that a vegetated buffer could certainly qualify as that.
So, but my bigger challenge is, so when you were here previously,
Yes.
and the clerk was kind enough to send me the application from last time, but I neglected to print it out. But my memory is that you had a conforming lot, right? You had a lot that, because you were looking at combining Lot 1 and Lot 2, that gives you more than the required minimum,
Correct.
and that you wanted to,
I was seeking a
Frontage,
front,
you said?
I was seeking a front yard setback
frontage.
variance, yeah.
And the feedback I gave you last time is, hey, build a smaller house, and you won't need a variance.
And that's exactly what we would like to do.
Well, but now you're creating two non-conforming lots. You have created your hardship, or you want to create your hardship because you want to create an undersized lot. But right now, you have a lot that complies with the minimum
Correct.
lot size. And there's just so much case law that having an undersized lot is not a hardship. And I didn't, right, there's always this idea of a self-created hardship. If you, create your hardship, it makes it that much harder to justify a variance. But let me ask you, because the pictures that you showed show trees in the street, right? And you said
Yes, on
plan
Marcy
is to
Street right here.
keep those?
Yep,
And so the frontage of the property, it's not all going to be paved?
correct. And that's not required to be paved. We have access to all the utilities. The fire department has access to the site. As I mentioned, when I was here over the summer, we have vetted this out with all the other municipal departments to make, again, the goal here is to get to a solution that works for the neighbors as much. We're back here because the neighbors had expressed concern about keeping the buffer. And quite frankly, we'd like to keep the buffer as well. It makes all the sense in the world to keep the buffer here. And so how did we get to this point? Well, we said, okay, you're right, it's a conforming lot now, and we could move forward and potentially do something different, but it made more sense to deed the buffer portion of this land to the city. Not only are we going to give them the Lot 2 piece, but this lot also controls 20 feet in Marcy Street, as you might know, on a private way. We're going to deed that over as well, deed over our rights as that as well, so that, again, that stays under city control, and it can't be modified. And really, the reason we're here is because we want to retain this. We want to be able to give it to the city. We think this is a benefit to the neighborhood. The neighborhood, who, when you open it up to the public, hopefully they're going to come up here and say that this is a benefit to them as well. The hardship would be, there's trees there. If we take them down, it's to nobody's benefit. And I understand and fully respect you can't create your own hardship. But that's where we're at here.
All right, let me ask, any members of the board have any questions?
I've got a couple. It's good to see you again as well.
Thank you, sir.
On your picture number 4 there, was there talk of like a gate or a fire? Is that where that would have been, or will
Yeah.
be, or
Yeah, so,
or
great
it's not going to
question.
be there anymore?
It's not going to be there anymore.
Okay.
So part of our neighborhood conversations and working with the planning board and working with the fire department is perfectly comfortable with the way this is today. Adding another house there that they can access, they have no problem with it. They're not going to require that road to keep going through, so that eliminates the gate.
Okay.
And that was one of the things the neighbors didn't like too. Who's going to maintain the gate? And for sure, it potentially could have its challenges. So we worked with the rest of the city, the fire department in particular, to make sure that we could come up with a solution that worked. And I had met the chief and the deputy chief out there, and they were happy
We're
with
happy
it.
with it.
Yep.
Okay. Should we grant the variance here tonight, you'd have and this will be a single-family home, is that right?
Correct.
And you'll be within all the other dimensional restrictions that we have?
Correct. As much as I would have loved that front yard setback to build a
It's
25.
about 1.5 feet.
Yeah, it was a foot, yeah, it was a couple of feet,
Yeah.
just to make a standard, nice 24 foot, but as an architect, I think I can figure out how to do it in 22 feet, so we chose not to ask for any additional relief.
Regarding Lot 2 given to the city, what if the city doesn't want it? I mean, how does that work? Does it go through the Conservation Commission?
It's a great question. I fully expect that the city will take it.
Because if the city wanted it, the city could take it by eminent domain.
Sure.
That would be a hardship, but that's not happening
Right.
here. So if the city took this land and deprived you of that footage, thereby creating a non-conforming lot, there's case law on that.
Fair
That's a
enough,
hardship.
fair enough.
But that's not what we have here.
Not what we have here. And was also just going to touch on the fact that whether this would open up more property throughout the city to work on compromises, and then, but we could see that the the tax revenue, the city's not gonna get the full amount of that 13,000 square feet anymore, right? It's just,
Correct, but it's gonna be a developed lot, so theoretically it'll be worth a little more, I would suspect. Significant, they'll probably get some, wasn't really thinking about the tax aspect of it,
Well, I
but
know.
sure, yeah.
you want to know, if everybody has some land, let me just give that to the city. But this seems
And-
like a good compromise to me, and I guess that's all I had for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my big concern was the gate, because gates open. And, and I think that it's such a congested area over there to have any more possibility of cut-throughs was a big concern. But I also think about the whole chicken and egg kind of thing of, it would be better to have it approved for you to build it and then have the city move, as opposed to us, because like Dan says, I worry about precedent. Everybody that has 8,000 square feet somewhere, and we try to be reasonable, but there is that concern, so, but I think this is a much improved plan than what we had, because I was just worried about traffic, and also that property that, up against it is close, and the neighbors had concern, but so the buffer is important, no
We think so,
question
too.
about that.
If I may, the risk of being repetitive, so if the lots remained one lot, you would have enough to build it. What was, just if you would refresh my memory, was it the front yard setback issue that you had that would have required a variance?
Yeah, that's why we were here last summer, seeking a
About
front
3
yard
feet,
variance.
about?
Because I just wanted to build a couple of foot more, bigger house, but that didn't seem to be
Okay.
going in that direction, so.
And the
we
neighbors
withdrew.
were against removing the buffer zone.
So that was the biggest concern of the neighbors, or the two biggest concern, one Marcy Street going through, removing the buffer, Marcy Street goes through, and then removing the trees here. So,
But why couldn't you just put a deed restriction on Lot 2?
it's
If you
possible.
want to buy this property, thou shalt never be allowed to remove those trees.
But for somebody coming along and deciding it's their property and they're gonna remove the trees, at least it puts it makes it a city property, and it becomes a criminal act, I would say, chopping down trees on city property.
Well,
It,
is
it,
this,
it becomes more concrete, I guess. It kind of memorializes the buffer in a different way.
Well, sure, but don't you think the neighbors are going to be watching that like a hawk? If this is sold
Yeah, but okay.
to a company, sorry, if this is sold to, Joe Schmo homeowner, and there's a deed restriction, and the whole neighborhood knows there's a deed restriction, and they see, I don't know, ABC tree removal parks its truck out there that morning, you don't think they're going to be on the phone to the building commissioner or the police? Hey, guys, yeah.
Yeah, until they chop down the trees. I mean, what was the police? How can the police enforce
But
that?
I have personal experience with this, so I can tell you.
Some
I've
tree
done it
law?
Myself, in my neighborhood, when I saw the truck pull up, called the building commissioner, I said, you gotta get over here, because there's a special permit condition on this property, and they're about to violate it.
What if it's a Saturday and Tommy's not there?
And they call the police.
Fair enough.
Here's the deed restriction.
Understood.
You don't think the police are
Understood.
gonna be like, guys, you gotta figure this all out, like, this could be a big problem. Go get your boss, we're not gonna let you
How
do
many
it on
trees
our
would be taken down before somebody came to take care of that? That's all we're trying to protect against. We feel if it's in the city's domain, there's less chance that that's gonna happen.
Sure, and if it's in the city's domain and one of these giant trees goes over in a storm and hits one of the houses, now it's the city's problem. Does that sound like a good, doesn't sound like a good idea to me, but I am not gonna vote for this. I
That's fair.
can't, I just can't. I hold everybody's feet to the fire when they come looking for a variance. It's a very high legal standard. And every every homeowner who asks for a variance, I do the same thing I did to you. Build a smaller house, you won't need a variance, you don't meet the legal standard, do this, do that. And I just can't, and I understand the neighborhood, I understand, I totally get it. But there's a statutory standard that's not flexible, and I think the statutory standard needs to be applied uniformly to everybody. If it's John Smith or it's Cummings property, it's a single statutory standard. So, but that's, you know, that's why I'm just one person on this board. And so if 4 other people vote for it, it will pass. So if anybody else wants to speak in favor, I think now would be the time, unless
I
there's,
just wanted to finish that question. So will there be language in this, when the property is deeded to the city, that it will remain a buffer area and that the city will maintain it?
That's the objective, yes.
For example, tree dies, tree topples over, will it be replaced, or does it become, you know, a overgrown eyesore?
I would fully expect that, I would fully hope that the city would take care of the trees, and the trees look like they're gonna be there for a little while. I don't know if they're gonna be there.
Well, I know,
In
but
perpetuity, but-
expecting it, I'm asking if, is the language going to be there that they're required to?
We're gonna deed it over to the city with the restriction that it remains used exactly as it is today. The buffer remains.
sure, but that didn't answer his question. So his question is, if we have one of these other giant storms, right, a huge windstorm, and it takes out 8 of those trees,
Yeah.
and let's hope it doesn't land in the neighborhood's houses, okay? It takes out 8 trees. Does the city then have to go buy some new trees and plant them? Does it have to go get, you know, and I forget how they measure the tree trunks, you know, does it have to get, you know, 5-inch, God, I'm blanking on the phrase, like.
Caliper.
Thank you, yes. Or what? Oh, hey, 8 trees blow down, sorry, you know, the buffer's getting a little thinner.
Well, I mean, because that's the essence of the buffer, the trees there, and you've said they're mature trees, so I'm just asking the
Yep.
question, if that's something that could be worded so that the city is responsible for maintaining it and making sure that it doesn't go away.
Yes, that would be our wish as well, so we would be happy to do it that way. That's our intention for sure.
Yeah, and have all the relevant city authorities, so it's like the Parks Department signed on this, like, hey, yeah, guys, you have more to maintain, and if a tree falls, you need to replant them. Has anybody consulted with the DPW or the Parks Department?
I have not on that matter.
That might be a good idea. In any event. Any other questions or?
Just have one. So on Marcy Street, guys would be looking east, so towards the warehouse. Is that the picture, that was picture number 4? The driveway, I'm assuming that you'd be proposing, is to the left between the buffer and the property line. So
Yeah,
How
yeah.
much width is there between the property line and the buffer?
What the intention would be to kind of pull the paving back, probably another 15 feet to make that work. It might be like this tree would go, but that, and a couple of the scrubs, but yeah, we're gonna push it back just a little bit so that we could get in there, yes. But you're absolutely right, the driveway will be on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
And we would extend that, I think it was 15 feet that we're asking for, to extend it when we go to the
So
planning
you would be
board.
pushing the curb.
Yeah, well, there's actually no curb there. Right now, it's just a little landscape
just
block
a
wall.
wall.
And these are landscape timbers, so it's, yeah,
So
well, we were
push it
pushing the
to
paved
the
area about 15 more feet.
Thank you.
So as we sit here today, is there any actual signed agreement with the city?
No, this was kind of the first step, because there'd be no need for it if this didn't move forward.
So what happens if this board grants you a variance and then you start to talk to all the relevant departments and the new city solicitor and the new mayor and people are like, ooh, why are we doing this? Then this board will have granted a variance that,
We'll have to figure it out.
Well, is it something that could be continued and they could go through the appropriate, like I said, I don't know if conservation will have something to do with that. The Parks Department was brought up.
So there's no conservation land here, so that, they don't have jurisdiction here. Yeah, certainly we could talk to the DPW, or the Parks Department, and kind of feel this out a little bit.
Now, excuse me, weren't we going to hear from some of the city officials?
Yeah, let's open, I
Okay.
think it's probably time to open it up. So if anyone who wants to address the board in connection with this request for a variance at what had previously been referred to as 0 Marcy Street, feel free.
Good evening. My name is Bill Papalato. I am the city councilor of Ward 2, which is where the property resides. So this has gone on for, as you all know, many, many, many months. There's been lots of meetings, there's been coffees at neighbors' houses, there's been meetings in City Hall, there's been board meetings that have happened that you guys have attended, that, you know, it's gone on and on and on. And at the end of the day, what the petitioner can do is keep that lot size full, keep that whole, blast every one of those trees out there, and everybody will go home unhappy here. So I strongly suggest that you give this consideration, because, you know, the folks at Cummings have been extremely flexible, working with the neighbors and working with the board, the planning group in the city, and he's done everything he could to make this whole. And I feel like this is a unique situation where we can do things that the petitioner gets, you know, his house built on there, and the neighbors walk away happy here. So I please give some strong consideration to this, because it's a win-win situation, and I really feel like this is a good solution, but it's in your hands, and thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name, for those of you who I've not yet met, I'm Tina Cassidy, and I am the Planning Board Director. And I'm here tonight really in that capacity, but also in some respects, I suppose, as a long-term career city planner. I'm here tonight to hopefully give you a little bit of background, a little bit more on what's happened so far with the Planning Board on this matter that may help you as you do your deliberations through this evening. Mr. Avini met with the Inspectional Services Director and I months ago to figure out what he might need to do with the planning board, irrespective of what happened at the ZBA. And he was instructed, the same way we instruct almost all developers, to file a subdivision plan to build out the roadway so that you have 100 feet of constructed frontage. Then the lot will be legal and you'll be able to get a building permit. And so we had a public hearing that kicked off in November, got continued, and we held a site visit at the neighbor's request. And it was an enlightening site visit. We had a good number of them are behind me, but there was probably 15 to 20 people at the site visit that morning. A couple of city councilors, including Mr. Pappalardo, were there as well. And there were a couple of interesting and, I'd have to say, I guess, uncommon takeaways from that site visit. One was that for one rare occasion, the residents weren't voicing objections to having another house in their neighborhood, which was different. They also didn't raise necessarily the customary concerns about traffic density and drainage that we often hear about. They have traffic in their neighborhood, they have a lot of issues, but they recognize that they were not really in connection with a new single-family house that was coming in. What was a concern of theirs is the longer term and the value they placed on that buffer area that we've been talking about, the one on the lot, and then the one that's actually within the right-of-way. It's really the last stand and the only thing standing between a residential zoning district and a very active industrial site. And although it's not perfect and it varies with the season, the neighbors were very clear about the value they placed on that. And in fact, were the ones that suggested initially that the planning board maybe consider doing something other than its typical requirements in this case, if the developer in fact is required to build out 100 feet of frontage. Much of the buffer that exists in the Marcy Street right-of-way will of necessity go away. They'll have to flatten that and extend the roadway for, I think, something in the order of close to 75 feet maybe, to get the 100 that they need, and that almost obliterates the vast majority of what's in the right-of-way. And that there's one house on Marcy Street, there's another house that directly abuts Marcy Street that faces Albany, and there's a few homes on Albany that all benefit from the buffer zone that you're looking at on that particular photo. I also attended a subsequent meeting that was sponsored by the Ward Councilor Papalardo, where residents sort of reaffirmed their desire to see the buffer preserved at any cost. They recognized that there could have been a deed restriction, and that was the original thought, but they are concerned that a property owner could go in and take down trees, and I heard the discussion earlier about the potential that, it could be stopped, and that's certainly possible, but I've also seen times when they act pretty quickly and 2 or 3 trees could come down, and the residents felt much more secure if the city were to own the property, that the likelihood of any of those trees coming down would be much less. And there was more of a sense of permanency if it was under city ownership and control. They even talked about, if it did get deeded to the city, could it even be rezoned maybe to the open space district, just to make sure. And I'm not sure that that's going to happen or would be advisable, but it certainly was in keeping with the notion that the property would stay as it is, as a buffer for the residents. Sorry, I made a few notes just to make sure that I covered everything. Cummings too, as Mr. Avini has mentioned, they are willing to also deed to the city the rights that they have to the Marcy Street right-of-way that would go with the new house lot, the lot that they would deed to the city, and Commonwealth Realty Foundation, is that the name of the technical owner? They also own a parcel on Marcy Street beyond number 2, between what you see there and Henshaw. There's another house lot on the right-hand side. It's not developed, potentially could be in the future, but it has frontage on Henshaw, such that they would also be willing to deed any rights that that property has to the Marcy Street right-of-way to the city, so that in the end, the city would be able to control and own the right-of-way and the buffer that's in it, and also the lot that was pointed out earlier by Mr. Avini. For the planning board is faced with the potential to consider granting some waivers. Normally, the 100 feet of frontage is a requirement for construction, and that's what he's been advised so far to do. But the planning board is willing to consider potentially granting some waivers so that the 100 feet of constructed frontage wouldn't be required. If you grant the variance for the lot size, the planning board would do some similar, would be similarly situated in considering allowing less frontage to be constructed. And that's unusual for the planning, but perhaps as unusual as it might be for a ZBA to grant a lot size variance. So too, it's very unusual for the planning board to require anything less than what the zoning typically requires. But having heard from the residents and hearing their concerns, the planning board at least is open to considering doing just that, so that working in concert perhaps, or in tandem with what the ZBA might do on a variance, we might end up with the smaller lot being buildable, with the parcel being deeded to the city, and in addition, the rights in the right-of-way. As I said at the beginning, I'm here in part to offer some information about what happened with the planning board, but also I want to talk to you sort of as a longtime planning board supporter, administrator. It's very, very rare to have a group of residents be unopposed to the construction of a new house. It's also rare to have a planning board or to ask a planning board to give a developer relief from what are the typical construction requirements. It's also not particularly common to have an applicant that has something of value to offer the city and is willing to do that, and in fact give it to the city as part of an overall approval process. In this one particular case, all 3 things have happened. I understand what the residents' concerns were, and when we were at the site visit, the then chair of the planning board, Claudia Bolgan, looked at me at one point when we were in the middle of the discussion after hearing what the residents' concerns were and recognizing what some of our typical construction standards would mean in the field. She turned to me sort of, and I'll paraphrase, I guess, by saying to me, I think the rules are getting in the way. And what she meant by that, obviously, was that a literal requirement to follow all of the rules, including the planning boards for subdivision, would mean something relatively negative for the neighborhood and a less desirable outcome for them than might otherwise be the case if we were able to grant some relief. The fact is that Cummings can create a subdivision plan that could be approved by the planning board. That construction that would be required to build that would be, I think, invasive and unwanted by the neighbors, and probably, you might argue, detrimental to them in the long term. The good news is that that might be avoidable, depending on the ZBA and the planning board. I think both would have the opportunity to maybe find ways to discharge their respective responsibilities. I do not discount at all the appropriate comment that your chair made about hardship. I recognize that's out there. But I'd like to think not only the comment about the buffer, but the fact that there is a built environment, a man-made environment. There's been a hardship created for the neighborhood, if not for the lot. And that is a residential neighborhood that directly abuts an industrial district, has no real distance setback of any kind. These trees are all that there are. So I guess I would close by saying that I would hope that the ZBA might be able to support the variance request. If you did, though, I would recommend a couple of things just to make sure that the picture in the end looked exactly as it's being painted, and that would be that if there were conditions that in fact required the petitioner to transfer ownership of the buffer lot to the city, and also a requirement that they deed the rights to Marcy Street that accrue to the lots that I mentioned earlier in my remarks. As long as those two things were to occur, I think that the thought would be that they would come back to the planning board. They get the variance for the lot size, they'd come back to the planning board. The planning board would consider approving a subdivision plan that required less than 100 feet of constructed frontage. And then if they obtained that, and that too would be conditioned upon the deeding of the parcels and the rights as mentioned earlier. As to your questions, I guess in closing about the future, I know that there were at least 3 counselors that I've spoken to over the course of the last couple of months who were 100% in support of the city taking ownership, but only 3, and there are 9 members. So nobody could stand here tonight and say to you that for sure the city council would accept it. But I think we're hard-pressed to figure that the remaining counselors would be in opposition to the 3 that are supportive of it. So there are no guarantees right now. That we have not asked that question directly, but we would be hopeful that they would. So I thank you for your time this evening. I hope that maybe some of the information I provided is helpful, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the board, my name is Claudia Bolgan, and I am a member of the Woburn Planning Board and its immediate past chair. And I thank you for hearing me tonight. I am here representing the Planning Board. I'd like to express the Planning Board's support for the variance request before you this evening for all the reasons that Tina just stated. But there are 2 additional points that I would like to make. The first one is I want to acknowledge the unusual situation that we're in. In my 27 years as a planning board member, I do not remember another occasion that a planning board member has appeared to speak at another board's meeting. So that in itself is unusual, and I again, thank you for the welcome. But I want to be very clear that the planning board comes here today with the greatest respect for this board's independent judgment as to the variance request. Our only goal in coming today is to provide information on our reasoning in case that information is helpful to you in your consideration. Second, because the planning board does support the residents' goals of doing everything possible to preserve the forested and treed buffer, in order to make that happen, the planning board will have to use our waiver authority under the subdivision control law and approve, frankly, a very minimally constructed roadway. And you can imagine that is not something that we do. But in this case, the planning board has the same concern that I believe Member Clancy expressed. Precedent. What does this do for everyone else that comes in after? Because we, of course, as you do, run into that too. And for the planning board, there are 3 things about this particular petition that distinguish it from other filings. The first thing is here the applicant can actually construct their project without waivers under the subdivision control law. And most of the waivers we see are for the situation when the applicant can't do that or doesn't want to do that for their own purposes. Second, here the residents are not opposed to the new building. What they're opposed to are the city's rules and regulations attendant to that new building. And thirdly, the residents and several city councilors are in favor of the waivers. So from the planning board's point of view, those are the 3 things that distinguish the actions that we are being asked to take, which is to approve a minimally constructed roadway, from the other petitions that may come in following our action. So I wanted to acknowledge Member Clancy's question because we're in exactly the same position. But having heard the residents, having been to the site, having heard the residents say that they felt unheard, completely unheard and uncared for by the city, that is the reason why we've taken this position that the planning board has asked for essentially a coalition. So in sum, I would ask that this board, in granting the variance, the developer in deeding the land and the rights of way, the rights to the right of way in Marcy Street to the city, and the planning board in granting the subdivision control waivers needed, can work collaboratively and together for the best interests of the residents of this neighborhood and honestly for the city. So I thank you very much for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions that this talk has engendered. Thank you.
What are the specific conditions the planning board is in favor of waiving?
So what we are being asked to waive, the actual stuff we have to waive is what you're seeing up there. So we generally don't waive 100 feet of constructed frontage, as you can imagine, for the same reasons that Member Clancy said. As soon as we do that, we're going to have every developer in the city coming in and saying, oh, well, you know, what about ours? So it's the construction of the road being extremely minimal. I mean, what you're seeing there is essentially the road, right? So instead of doing our normal planning board thing and saying, okay, you need 100 feet of frontage, what's that road gonna look like, what are the sidewalks gonna be, blah, blah, blah. What we're essentially doing is saying, okay, we're keeping those trees. We're making the road, I think, extend a little further in order for snow storage to happen. But essentially, the driveway is coming off what you see.
So what does the planning board currently anticipate? So no vote's been taken, as far as I understand. Okay. So instead of 100 feet of paved frontage, what is the planning board anticipating is going to be sufficient pursuant to its waivers?
Something in the nature of what, 37, Tina? Yeah, a whole lot less than 100. And again, what we look at as the planning board is we're interested in public safety. Like, constructing a road for the sake of it being a certain amount is useful most of the time to make sure that the roads that we approve are safe for the public to traverse, that are safe for our city police and fire to service. Those are usually our criteria. And so when we look at this and we have our fire department saying, you know, that's okay, and have our residents really, really, really concerned about what would happen if Cummings did what they have every legal right to do. We put that together and we think, you know, the rules and regulations of the city should be enforced to the benefit of the residents. And if enforcing them does not do that, then why are we enforcing them?
So that's it? A waiver of 100 feet of paved frontage, no other waivers?
I call my expert.
Sure.
Typically, straight-face granite curbing is required. Sidewalk, typically on both sides of the roadway, 2 5-foot sidewalks, a grass strip of some width. We never got into the details of what it could look like if we required it, because I believe this right-of-way is 40 feet wide. But curbing of some, granite curbing, sidewalks of some width, grass strips of some width. Turnaround, typically there's a cul-de-sac turnaround or some other manner, a T-stop or some other authorized means of turning a vehicle around. In this case, it would perhaps coincide with the driveway, but there wouldn't be a construction additional turnaround for the end.
So that's 5
At least-
waivers?
Yeah. And then, I guess the other one is, there's usually a requirement for a 6-inch water line and an 8-inch sewer line. And in this case, the proposal is to run individual services from Albany Street. So that's a standing waiver request that wouldn't be unique and depend upon the variance being granted. Right. From the end of the. I apologize, and that is
okay.
one other, is looping of the water line.
All right, so the waiver is to not loop it,
Correct,
to dead end it?
correct. And we checked with the Public Works Department, which is one of the ones that typically, if we have an issue, it's an occasional waiver that comes up a couple times a year. It's often a request from a developer. The subdivision we had prior to this, a few months earlier, the DPW was adamant that the water line be looped. So the developer in that case had to go to a couple of different iterations and find a way to loop it. But we asked the question here, and it was felt that there was no need for an additional loop through Marcy. So they wouldn't propose one, and the planning board theoretically wouldn't require one.
And it's a dead end.
All right, any other questions, comments?
I
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I did have some questions for Mr. Aveni, did I pronounce that right?
Sure.
Thank you. Could you just call up the drawing of the Lot 1 and Lot 2 as opposed to the overhead? Either one would actually be fine. Okay, that's good. Could you point out where, so if I understood it correctly, the right-of-way is below the orange area?
Yeah, Marcy Street continues through here.
Okay,
So
but
the photo 4, you were standing right here looking there, and it was all trees.
okay,
Yes.
all right. So, and those trees are coming out?
Yeah, that photo 4 was Marcy Street looking that. No, these trees, we're gonna potentially take a couple of trees out just to, like we discussed, extend the paving 15 feet so that the city can actually plow the snow there. One of the neighbors now, their driveway's right at the end and snow gets built up there, so we're gonna push the pavement 15 feet and we'll access this lot from right here. But otherwise, that buffer will stay
Okay.
very much intact.
Could you point out where the frontage is that they were discussing?
Yep.
Is going to be,
So right now, we have 108, if this was to go through, we would have 108 feet of front lot line,
right?
which you need 100. So the waiver would be from having to actually pave that 100 feet. If we had to pave that all the way through here, and that was what we originally proposed, and there was gonna be a gate here, and again, to the detriment of the neighborhood, we realized that that wasn't
So
what
the
anybody wanted to do.
108 is going down to,
The paved frontage will be about 40 feet.
okay, I thought 37 or
Yeah,
something like that.
between
Okay.
37 and 40, that's,
And next question, across Marcy Street, that second lot that is owned by Cummings?
yeah, it's, Commonwealth, so these are 36 by 77 and a half.
And I
Full
mean the
na-
one below.
No.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, yeah. So I'm just showing you, this shape right here, there's
Yeah.
another lot, that exact shape, halfway here, right here, right below it.
Okay, it looks a
Twice as
lot
wide though,
wider.
right?
It's actually, oh, no, it is a little wider, yeah, it goes to right here, so it's actually two 36s, so it's 72, it's this piece here.
So did I understand correctly that that is also potentially going to be deeded to the city?
Nope, we're gonna deed the 20 feet, so these two lots, this property here and this property here, as well as this property here and this property here, control half of this, the right-of-way in front of their property, right? So it go boom, 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 boom. So we're gonna give the 20 feet that this property owns, and then the 108 plus the 36 that this property owns, so that all that becomes controlled by the city as
Okay,
well.
so just that section in Marcy Street, not the property.
Correct, yeah, not the property, just the
Okay.
sections in Marcy Street, correct.
Can you restate that? Because I first interpreted it as the portions of the right-of-way that you had discussed deeding to the city was just in between Lot 2 and the lot underneath. But I don't think that's what you just said.
No, that's not what I said. So it would basically, lot one from here, this is 40 feet. Actually, it might be easier to show it here a little bit. So this is 40 feet. We'd go 20 feet, and the 20 feet all the way to here, and connect in here, so there'd be a rectangle in here that would be deeded to the city. We do the same thing on this piece of lot, go up 20 feet, all the way to there and there, 72 feet, I believe it is. So it'd be, a rectangle here and a rectangle here, and that would basically go to the city and give city control of Marcy Street.
So
Again, that would preserve the buffer.
whoever buys Lot 1 won't have any control of the right-of-way in front of its house?
Correct. It'll belong to the city.
And last question, could you just highlight where the sidewalks and curbs are planned?
There are
They're
no
not.
side, so right now, this is the Marcy Street, just, this is it. There's no curb. Right? There's no sidewalks. So we're just asking to leave it just as it is.
Oh,
As
I
opposed to-
misunderstood. I thought,
We still have to ask for the waivers for that theoretically, because we're going to extend it 15 feet.
okay,
But yeah, we're just asking not to have to go back and make that piece of road look nothing like the rest of it, if that makes sense.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so this is Marcy Street's still a private way? But the
Yes.
city plows it?
Yes.
Through the chair, I've got a question just regarding, excuse me, that vacant lot. You plan to build that, or is that,
No.
is that like Mr. Ryan said, I thought it too was brought up. You're gonna try and deed that to the city, or?
The
you
vacant,
gonna-
which vacant lot? This, we're gonna
The
give
one,
this to the city.
the one on the other side.
Oh,
of
the other side,
Marcy
yeah,
Street,
no,
south.
that'll remain in the portfolio for the time being.
So as you guys go through this with
This one
deeding the
here.
rights to the street and everything, suppose you want to build there in 10 years, are you gonna run into any jams because of what we did here, what the planning board did?
Our desire is not to do much else down here.
Yeah,
This is this is a piece of property that has been in the portfolio, been controlled by the owner for years and been paying taxes on it for years, and it just felt like, okay, let's see if we can't do something with it and separate from it. It's not doing the portfolio any good at this point in time.
Well, there's the other lot, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you.
But, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there other people who want to be heard in connection with this request for a variance at 0 Marcy Street?
Good evening. My name is Marlene Soler, and I live at 25 Erie Street. My property actually abuts two sides of Lot 1 and 2. And I am here asking for the variance to be granted. As neighborhood, we did go back and forth with all of these meetings. We went through the gate, larger variance, the frontage. We have all spoken, met outside, and we are okay with this being a smaller lot if indeed we can get those trees given to the city so that they can take care of it. We do not want it to be deeded to the new owner in case something does happen that they go through one day and they cut it. Excuse me. So we are asking for you to actually listen to the petitioner. We are very tired at this point, coming out as neighbors trying to fight for this, because we've all come to an agreement. Long as those trees do not get touched, we do not open the roadway, which we've agreed to, that it won't happen, and long as it doesn't get put into a deed for the new owners, that we would like this house to be built on a smaller lot.
All right, thank you.
Paul McDonald, 35 Albany. I'm right across the street from Marcy Street. We've had a lot of things going back and forth on this. I think we've come to a good situation. It's important to keep that buffer zone. As long as it's deeded to the city so they can't be cut down, I'd be in favor of it. That's
Right,
it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Maureen Lanfer, and I live at 3 Erie Street, and the brunt of all of this traffic and congestion comes down Erie Street. This buffer zone is so important, not only to kind of disguise the industry part of it, but for the noise, the pollution, the noise of the dumpsters being emptied, the traffic and the trucks idling 24/7 when they want to park there. It's imperative that this strip with these trees are not removed or destroyed. It really is going to help us, and this end of Erie Street really is kind of a forgotten area, and it needs help. It really does. We all work so hard for our properties to keep everything nice, and this is something that really needs to be addressed. And I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who cares to address the board?
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to follow up with one thing. We've had a lot of conversation about this. You know, we talked earlier about the criteria for a variance, and I think this project meets it, and I want to tell you how. You know, basically it says owning to the circumstances relating to the soil condition, shape, or topography. We touched on the topography. I believe the topography includes the trees. Especially affecting such land or structures, but not affecting generally the zoning district. Kind of feel this is a unique property. This is not zoning district wide. A literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance or the bylaw would involve substantial hardship, financial or otherwise. I think in this case, otherwise, the neighbors would like to see the buffer remain. The hardship to them would be if this buffer came down. I think there's an opportunity to use that otherwise word to fit this in quite nicely. In that, desirable relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good. It's pretty clear from what we've heard that the public good won't be negated here. And without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent or the purpose of such zoning law, zoning ordinance, or bylaw. I think this project, as we've presented it, does meet that criteria, and I hope that this board will consider all of those factors, everything they've heard tonight, and grant the variances we've requested.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional comments, discussion? How does the board wish to proceed?
Well, I can make a motion, but before I make the motion, I just want to make sure I even can make a motion. I'm just concerned as it goes through the pipeline, could I condition it that for instance, the variance would be, approval of the variance would be on the condition that the transfer of the ownership of Lot 2 is made to the city, and then, but I don't know how that works, and that the structure being built will remain a single family. I mean, I think those are the two.
I think part of the.
Where does it go from here? It'll go back to the planning board? You know, where, I don't
know, we've never been asked to condition, our conditions are very kind of concrete. Yeah, and I don't know, that's why I asked the question, well, what happens if the DPW says, we have enough work to do, we don't want to do this? Or, you know, again, I don't know.
May I?
Yeah, please.
Thank you. I understand your point, and I think, you know, if we go through this and we're lucky enough to keep moving forward here with this project, and some city department has a different thought, then it kind of, if it's conditioned properly, it disqualifies it. In that sense, disqualifies what would happen here. Okay, you're right. If we can't get the city to say, yes, this makes sense and we'll take it, then that doesn't work. It could be conditioned to nullify this decision if in fact that condition isn't met. That's what a condition is.
Right.
So we'd be happy with a condition like that being posed. It's certainly going to be a single-family house. We have every intention of giving this to the city and preserving the buffer. So we're comfortable with how you think you would like to condition that if that was so your wish.
Yeah, but it's not, my understanding is it's not just, the idea is that not just Lot 2 is going to be transferred to the city. It's the rights of way.
Oh, yeah.
In a way that
The rights of way
I wouldn't
of
even
Marcy
frankly
Street, right?
know how to draft at this point, because there's no measurements. I've seen your cursor on the street, so I wouldn't even know how to draft the condition if the. So let me tell you my thoughts. So I'm just one person. I don't think it meets the legal standard. There's a very high legal standard. There's case law that says this doesn't cut it. But if the board votes in favor of it, I think there's a lot of conditions that would need to be placed on this, and I think frankly the city solicitor would need to review those, because this is way more complex than anything that we've ever been asked to do before. And I would ask the property owner to submit a draft decision for this board and the city solicitor's review. But the challenge is, you know, if we take a vote and there's conditions that are put in, but there's not enough, and the city solicitor says, well, we should do this too, we've already taken a vote.
Well, then I would ask for a continuance to our next meeting and ask that the petitioner then submit the draft decision in due time, so perhaps we can come to a consensus at our next meeting for a vote.
If I could add one other
Sure.
thing, that if we do that, can the civil engineer also update the plan to reflect, Chairman was just asking too, as far as the right of way, with the 15, I think you said 15 foot for the curb line to be pushed back with the buffer so that it's clearly stated on the civil plan. Because right now, it's just showing the three-way.
Yep.
Can I
So I
raise
think-
another practical issue?
Sure.
We are we're transitioning from one city solicitor to the next, and I believe the new city solicitor starts on February 1st. And I don't know how
March.
that, March 1st, thank you. I don't know how that complicates things.
Oh, yeah, it complicates things.
Just wanted to bring that
No,
to the board's attention.
all right, so this is what I think makes sense. This is too complex for us to just kind of do we think this is a good enough job. I would ask that I would ask the applicant to continue this matter to our next hearing. And before the next hearing, get a list of the conditions. So I have them all written down in my hand scratch, right? But I want to make sure that we have all of them. So whatever waivers you're going to ask for the planning board, we get those, that we get the proper, marking up the plan would be a good idea, because whatever the conditions are, need to be accurate as to what's on the ground, and we're only gonna have one shot. Okay, and if we screw it up, it's gonna screw it up for everybody. So it needs to be done as accurately and completely as possible. So that's how I would suggest going about doing it, but I would not, and I usually never do this, but I don't want to, it doesn't make any sense to do this extra work if there's other people who are going to join me in voting against this. Because if
That's fair.
someone joins me, then it's dead. And I don't want to waste anyone's time. I also want to know if there's any other concerns out here that could be properly conditioned, then we address everybody's input and we have a comprehensive, accurate document. So I would, although I hate to do it, I'm going to do it. If any members of the board have any feedback or concerns and would like to see additional clarifications or conditions, or if you're like, yeah, I'm not going to vote for it, please share that information so that we don't waste anybody's time.
I would like, when you do put together the plan with the measurements, I'm just having a hard time understanding how we're getting from 108 feet down to 37, if I heard that correctly. And if that frontage can be expanded as much as possible, just from a bird's eye view, it seems as though you'd have the ability to do better than 37 feet.
Our goal is not to, though, so that we don't remove the buffer.
Yeah, but I mean, that section of the buffer just seems a lot wider than the mature trees,
deeper,
the
yeah.
pine trees. Just a thought,
Fair enough.
I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. It's, I think, probably the most unusual case I've ever seen. But the neighbors being in favor counts a lot for me, and the city officials who presented tonight it was extremely helpful to hear what they had to say. So that's the one area that I'm just having trouble understanding it. So maybe when you submit the drawings, it would relieve that, but it's going from 108 down to less than 40 feet. I just can't understand it.
I think in layman terms to that, for us, it's 108 feet.
Right.
But the pavement will come down about 30 feet or so,
Yeah.
and then you'll have your driveway cutting into and that's as far as it's gonna go, because I think the planning board, I think they need 100 feet
But they're waiving that, so.
But they're gonna waive that, so the pavement's only gonna come down 30,
Oh,
40 feet.
I understand that, but isn't that then the rest of it becoming a right-of-way that's going to go to the city?
Yes, and hopefully be maintained as a buffer, just like it is today.
But it would be a public way at that point, right?
Yeah, just that piece of it. The front piece that, you know, from Albany Street in, won't be, it'll still be a private way. It'll remain a private way in theory.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I would be inclined to support it if all the other things are in place, because I think it's I agree with what they, if you go by what you are permitted to do, it would create many more problems than this kind of compromise that will, my main concern was just the access, traffic access from the industrial park. And with that closed off, and I think that there's protections also on the other frontage, because there's not gonna be a road put in.
Correct.
And that the city would control, so I think that the city, I think the neighbors are protected in this way, in a way they wouldn't be if you just did what you by right could do.
Agreed.
Member Kavicki? Do you have any feedback or comments?
No.
Are you generally in favor of this
Yeah,
request?
I'll be in favor if I can see that civil plan, showing the dimensions, showing the buffer.
10-4.
How do you wish to proceed?
I have a question first. So, the next meeting, it'll be the same members, but the new member will not be able to participate, potentially? Okay, and all 5 members will be here?
Well, let's talk about our next meeting date.
Good segue.
I like talking about the next meeting. So our next meeting would be on March 20th?
Member Clancy can't attend
Yeah.
that.
I have a conflict on the 20th.
Okay, so if you're not here, then the new member would need to review the video and sign the affidavit that she's reviewed the video in order to participate.
I would rather go to the next meeting then if all these members are gonna be here. I'm happy to kick this to a meeting that everybody will be here.
All right.
Probably in
then
my best interest.
Our April one would be April 17th.
Still have March.
Didn't I just do March?
March 20th.
We can't, but Member Clancy isn't gonna be here on March 20th. And you don't have a clerk on the March 13th. You could do March 27th.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you said, I want to kick this to the next meeting.
Oh, no,
meaning
you tell me,
April.
if you can do a different time in March, I'm
Can
100% in.
Wait, so we won't have a clerk on the 13th?
Yeah, he's gonna be in Florida,
Good for you.
yes.
And
27th?
I won't be here on the 27th.
You won't?
I won't either.
And do the 13th?
I can do any time the week of the 11th, Monday, the 11th on. 11th, 12th.
I mean, you could do the 13th and you get a substitute
Do
clerk.
we get an alternate clerk?
You could have the city clerk, yeah, she'll be thrilled.
Will that hurt timing-wise for any other petitions for us, or no?
I haven't had anybody come in yet, so,
No?
no. Actually, I've had one person come in, but
Does the 13th work?
That's what I was just looking at my schedule. That might be a conflict, because I work around
The 3rd,
Could you
yeah,
put it on the 3rd?
yeah.
Unless, like you said, we just go to the 17th of April and hopefully have all our ducks in a row by then anyway.
I know all of my stuff in a row. I hate to say this.
Yeah.
I will be out of the country on April 17th.
Will you?
My daughter's in London, and our family's going to see her, so,
For you,
Nice.
as you should.
as we should. Yeah. I hate to be like that, and I
No
could
worries.
certainly have somebody in my stead, but I'd prefer to be here myself, and I'd prefer to have this board with me here as well. I'll take whenever you can, other than April 17th.
Would April 10th work?
No, Wednesdays are usually pretty free for this room. If not, we can find another one. Wednesdays are usually pretty good for getting this room.
Okay.
Tuesdays are tough.
All right, so you're asking this matter be continued to April 10th?
Please and thank you.
Okay.
So we have a form
Yes.
we're going to need you to sign.
Hope you have a pen, Gordon, because I don't have one. I'm going to print my name too.
No, it's fine. I know
Thank-
you
Thank you, sir.
I know you work.
Thank you.
How does the board wish to proceed in the applicant's request to continue this matter to April 10th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so this matter is continued to April 10th. The sooner you can get us the information, the better.
I'm on it.
Okay.
Thank you so much
All right.
for your time. I appreciate it. I
All
know
right,
I've
we'll
been here a
see you in
long time.
April.
Thank you all for your
All
time.
right.
I don't think so. I think it'd be, maybe we should, that's something we should talk about at the end.
Before I brought it up. It's fine.
The next item on our agenda is the petition of Zoe Shoren, 46 Fletcher Road, seeking reduction in a side yard setback, although I think, was this advertised? Sorry. Yeah,
This is the one that had the discrepancy in the advertisement.
sure. Is this really a request to amend the
No,
by?
um,
That's how I interpreted it.
okay, so the actual setback that she's seeking is, I believe it's 21, and the attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, but,
22.8?
right, but it's actually closer than that. The actual, it's 21.3 is what she's asking for.
So good evening again, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board. For the record, Attorney James Giuliano. Just a backstory, representing Zoe Shravern. She was pro se. Attorney Salvati was supposed to be here tonight. Obviously, due to circumstances, he's not coming, so I will be stepping in his place on this matter as of tonight. So my understanding on this matter is that on July 20th of 2022, a decision on this variance application was approved. Basically, I think most of you were on this board, Mr. Kavecki, I don't know if you were on the board at the time, but basically this was a two-family that was changed with the 1985 zoning ordinance from an R2 to an R1. And the lot is subsequently now falling under 6.1 under R1, other permitted use. So which kind of throws a mix into things. But, so the lot frontage is shy. It has 100 feet of lot frontage where obviously under other permitted uses, 125 is required. And the 25-foot setback is now infringed upon where my client is proposing to go 21.3 on the side setback. So we're just here tonight. Unfortunately, my client between 2022 and now has severe financial issues that she wasn't able to do the construction on the property. The variance lapsed, obviously, at that point in time, so we're here now just to ask for a variance. As Mr. Vincent said, the original petition was a special permit, incorrectly was switched over to a variance. So my client is basically seeking a variance under 6.1 for side setback, now that it is an R1 zoning district, just basically in accordance with the plans, and just sort of, again, it's too late to sort of extend what we had because the year is over. You have to obviously go within that year to extend it. That wasn't done, so we're just asking to sort of reaffirm a variance with the current set of plans that we're submitting with you tonight.
All right, is there any change in these plans?
From the last plans, my understanding is that we are now 21.3 on the side where it was, I believe, 22.3. That is the only difference of the changes between what is submitted tonight and the original from 2022.
All right, so this was, I think, published with the old measurement. So the notice seeks a reduction in the side setback from 25 to 22.8. But the plan that's submitted is 21.8 and
so I'm just-
21.3.
So I'm just keeping myself apprised. I'm just reading the notice for the first time. So my understanding would be then you can always go away without republishing, but if you're increasing it, it would need to be republished, unfortunately. Is that correct?
Is this from the, so I've always, my understanding is that our agenda is copied from the publication?
Unless the agenda, right. I don't, so I have to look at the agenda again.
Madam Chair, you just, so we can be straight on these numbers. Now, the previous decision has measurements of 22.2 and 22.8. So, am I understanding it correctly? It's the 22.2 is now going to be 21.3. 22.8 is now 21.
That's correct. That's my understanding as well.
That's where the 22.8 came
Oh,
from.
so that's what was on the petition.
So it's 20, okay.
But he's,
But it's really not 22.8.
it's 21.3.
21.3.
Thank you.
Oh. I'm sorry, I could have figured that out
It's
myself
okay.
if I had just turned the
Yeah,
page.
And Ms. Chavorin came in, I believe, earlier this week and pointed that discrepancy out to me, and she wondered if there was, be a problem. I told her I did not think there would be, because she's actually, the house is farther away from the lot line than the
Yeah,
she
that's what I was
requested
trying to
for.
figure out.
She's actually, she asked for 22.8, and she's actually 21.3. So I indicated to her I couldn't speak for the board, but I think that because she's farther away, it's, so that the setback is 20.
No, but she's
Oh, it's
closer.
closer.
She's closer because she's seeking, and I know, I'm sorry, I'm a little brain dead right now.
I know,
It's like another foot, right? Almost,
foot and a half.
almost another foot? 21.3 to 22.2. I'm sorry, the other way around, 22.2. and
She
now
asked for 22.8. And she's seeking 21.3.
So the plan submitted is closer to the lot line.
Right,
Then-
so my question would be, what makes up that additional roughly a foot?
Yep, so I've been told that at the time it was inadvertently drafted by Mr. Finocchio. So it's actually not a foot like extended out. It's structurally an area between the proposed addition and the existing house. So it was kind of necessary that was overlooked in the original. That's what we were told, and that's what my client was told by the surveyor.
Forgive me. So how did we vote for this as a special permit in the past? Any
This,
idea?
this was a very
She
convoluted.
It was-
applied for a special permit and she ended up with a variance. Sorry, I didn't.
A variance was issued in 2022, not a special permit.
Okay.
And I just had a chance tonight just to scratch the surface on, if you remember, city solicitors rendered an opinion on this as far as use, and I hadn't,
Madam
I
Chair,
can't read that fast, unfortunately.
I believe the petitioner wanted to speak.
Oh, sure.
With that 1 foot, I think when they originally drew the plan, somehow they didn't draw it from the edge of the house. They drew it like 1 foot in, so it's the same 15 feet that we're extending. We're just, there was a correction on the plan, the way it was drawn. That's why there's a 1 foot difference.
So the
Instead of-
structurally, it hasn't changed, just
It's
the
the same
original
15
plan was
feet that we're
incorrect.
adding. It's just instead of like measuring right from the edge, somehow got drawn from 1 foot in. And that's what I noticed. That's why I came to see Gordon. I was like, oh, that's a mistake.
They probably looked at it on the interior wall versus
Yeah.
the exterior.
Yeah, but it's the same space that
Same
we're adding
structure.
on.
Yeah, it was always intended for 15 feet, it's just where they started, I was told it was an error.
This is on the side of where the bushes are?
Yeah.
And then, okay, so you've got the driveway on the other side.
The other side.
The other side,
Yep.
and this is the side with the bushes?
With the bushes,
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
all right.
They're big, long, thick bushes.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so, Mr. Giuliano, you started to, when we started talking about the discrepancy in the measurements, you had started to say, you know, the rule of thumb is, and then we got off track.
Yeah, I mean, again, depending on how the board feels, if this is an issue, obviously, it's easier to go the other way than, away from the lot line than closer, but again, that's at the board's discretion. And I think, you know, based on our circumstances, we would take the board's discretion on that.
How does the board wish to proceed?
I had voted for this in the past, did I not?
Yes.
I
You did.
Yeah, so, I mean, I would kind of flow upon my vote from the past and be for it in this situation, just because of the, what appears to me, I guess, is just a mess up in the drawings. So I'd be for it again.
Does anyone need to speak on this, or?
Does anyone in the audience care to be heard in connection with this variance request at 46 Fletcher Road?
I move we approve the request?
Second.
All in favor of the pending motion? Opposed? So that passed 4-1. Attorney Giuliano, I'd ask that you prepare a draft decision for the board to review.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Start with the tough one, huh? Way to do it. Thank you, everyone.
Sure. Good luck.
Thanks.
The next item on our agenda is the petition of Lam Nguyen and T. Chu, 48 Linwood Street, Medford, and Dovita Inc., seeking a special permit and a variance to reduce a rear yard setback from 30 feet to 20.5 feet for an addition to a single-family home at 36 Wood Street. Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Just get up here for my presentation. Apologize.
Oh, you need this? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. My name is Mike Mena. I live at 57 Old Bolton Road in Stowe, Massachusetts, and I've been asked to speak on behalf of the applicant who is currently out of the country. As mentioned, this is a request for a special permit.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do you have anything in writing that gives you the
I do.
authority? You do?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, not a problem. So again, this is a special permit to reconstruct an existing single-family dwelling with non-conforming frontage and maintaining existing substandard side setback. The goal is to maintain as much of the existing foundation as possible, and also requesting a variance for what has been determined to be a rear yard setback of 20.2 feet where 30 feet is required. The property is located in the southeastern portion of Woburn on Wood Street, south of Russo Drive, near the jurisdictions of Stoneham and Winchester and 93. The property is currently occupied by a single-family dwelling in a dilapidated condition. The property is located in the R1 General Residential District, which permits single-family dwellings. The property is surrounded by developed lots with existing single-family homes. The existing lot is 17,242 square feet, but has substandard frontage, which was created by a variance granted in 1989. The proposed project is to demolish the existing single-family down to the foundation, again, maintaining as much of the rear foundation and the side foundation where the reduced setback is requested, and build a new single-family above, increasing the footprint of that. The dwelling would be accessed by an existing driveway fronting on Wood Street and providing 2 parking spaces via an attached garage that is below grade or at basement level. The proposed single-family would meet the rear and left side setback, requiring the granting of a special permit from the existing substandard side setback of 1.6 feet to the right. And again, the variance from the westerly facing rear setback proposed at 20.2 feet where 30 feet is required. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing. I was confused at first too. I was initially applying for this thinking this was a front yard setback reduced request for a variance, but the building official, and looking at the definition in the zoning ordinance, is that the front lot line is the lot line which directly abuts the right-of-way. So that is at the very front at Wood Street where it's only 20 feet. And given this is then not a front nor a side setback, where you see the 38 feet on the presentation here, that has been determined to be a rear lot line. So that is why the request is to a rear lot line in that location.
I'm sorry, you just said, I see the setback of 20.2, but I thought
Correct.
you said
There's-
30-something.
There's the, just where the arrows are of the 20.2 showing the dimension, you'll see the 38 feet. That shows the length of that lot line there. I don't know if you see that.
Oh, okay, you know what, I'm sorry, because I was looking at the measurement on the house. I was like,
Ah.
that's the house, okay, sorry, got it.
Right. So that lot line, that's 38 feet in length, has been determined to be a rear where visibly it would appear as a front, but it has been determined to be defined as a rear. So that's why the request is from the rear setback, which is that lot line. Just some photos of the existing building here. And the steepness of the lot, it's almost at a 50% slope. At this point at the lot, the existing house is built into the grade, and likewise the proposed house would be built into the existing hillside. surrounding the property. So this is the top view is looking from Wood Street up the long driveway to the house where you see the star. The house on the left was the lot created by the variance in the subdivision, and the lot to the right is an existing house over what looks like a former barn or mimicking a barn. The bottom photo is a cross turning around at 180 degrees. You have two single families also on a sloped hill, but not nearly as significant as the slope where the existing house is and where the proposed house would be. This is just going up Wood Street towards the town center, where there's a new development. You can see all the single-family homes there, which are quite large, and you can see a little bit of the roof line where the star is, and that's where the only visibility to the street is and to these neighbors. Here's the project plans. Again, here's the footprint of the house. You can see in the white outlined area is the footprint of the existing house. You can see where the foundation is at the rear, and to the side we're requesting for the special permit of 1.6 feet. We're trying to preserve as much of that foundation as we can and structure, and then rebuild on top of that with, in the darker red, is the additional area footprint of the house.
So I don't understand this. The variance that was granted to create this pork chop-shaped lot
Flag lot, yeah, pork chop.
provides for a side setback.
Yeah, I have a plan of that previous variance that you can see a better, whoops, maybe a better view of. Oh, no, you know what? It's in the application package.
Yeah.
If you have your material, it's in there.
So I'm wondering how,
So this house where you see the footprint in the white, that was existing at the time of the variance. It was the house in front, that was the new lot that's below this, closer to Wood Street, that was created, and that house is newer. So this was the original house on the lot. It was a front lot that was created.
okay, so, but still, when was this structure built?
I don't have a date on that.
Because the only time a house could have been built 1.6 from a lot line was before any zoning was enacted. But in any event, by operation of law, it's now deemed conforming.
So again, the footprint of where the white is we're proposing to keep the foundation at the rear and the side where you see the 1.6 request. And then in the darker red is the extended footprint of the new dwelling, requesting the 20 feet with retaining walls surrounding the property to flatten out some areas to have some usable space there. Here's a perspective that shows the grade and the garage that would be below, and it would be 2 stories above. So coming in, the driveway would be to the bottom of this exhibit. Those lines you see at the bottom are a little bit confusing. Those are dimension lines. They are not retaining walls or anything else.
Is that the overhang?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So you would drive up the driveway, go straight in. There would be stairs coming in to the left. So if you see the stairs, there are 3 windows there. Going back to the perspective, you can see you would drive into the garage. Where you see those 3 windows, that's where the stairs are. And then you have the door beyond and a small utility room there. You would go up those stairs then to access into the first level of the house, where there would be a powder room, kitchen, living area, and 1 bedroom, and then going up to the second floor or second level of the living area, You have the 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and nothing above that. You just have the flat roof above that level. Here's side elevations showing, or I'm sorry, the elevation showing the front and the rear, which with the rear, those 2 first levels are completely below grade, and you would only see that top level at the rear. Here are the side elevations here, where you can see that the extreme slope from the property where it drops almost 17 feet and about 35 feet, so close to a 50% slope there. The proposal is to have, it's not shown on these plans, but is to have siding on the house, either vinyl or a cement board. It's not been determined yet by the owner, with a small balcony coming out the back and a terrace out the back where the retaining wall is proposed. Here's again the perspective. And that concludes our presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be able to answer any.
Sure, so what's the hardship that you're relying on?
So the uniqueness is obviously the very steep slope compared to other properties around it, and the relatively narrow width of the lot. The hardship is to meet the literal enforcement of the code would require significant grading to push the house back into the slope. Not only significant grading, but significant cost. So given the steep topography of the site, it creates challenges for constructing a new house with a new foundation and driving into the hillside, removing vegetation. And we feel that, in our opinion, that it would not be detrimental to the zoning ordinance, and that it would be keeping with the zoning ordinance to provide a single family on the lot, which is intended in this zoning district. Given that the single family is more than 180 feet back from the front lot line, the perspective of having a reduced setback to that lot line would significantly be reduced and not be visible to the neighborhood. And also from the photographs, you can see, given from the vegetation to the neighbors and from the front, that there wouldn't be much visibility to the house.
All right, let me ask, any members of the board have any questions?
The driveway, do the owners own that driveway up?
Yes, yeah, they own the full strip.
It's not a paper street, okay, because I went by there many, many times trying to get the whole lay of the land there.
Yeah.
And I did see the topography there, but there's also a house very close to it. And
Yes, to the right, yeah.
Yeah.
So they do have an easement on it to access their lot at the back.
so you don't enter through Russo Drive, you enter through that driveway, that
Correct.
path, okay.
Yes.
Also, just in that closeness now, how are the neighbors supportive of this, that in that house it's very close?
Yeah, I believe the front property that was created via the variance, they own this existing lot, so they're selling it to Mr. Nguyen. And they have talked to the neighbor next door, and there hasn't been any objection. I don't believe the town has received any letters or notices from the neighbor in objection.
Well, go ahead.
When you say the owner is selling it to Mr. Nguyen, is the owner the one, as you pull in, number 34, I believe, is on
Yes,
your
would
left?
be to the
Yeah.
left, yes.
Is that the owner?
Yes, it's my understanding, yes.
Okay. If you go up a little bit more, that small structure on the right, first I thought it was a garage, but that.
Right, yeah, right, that's a separate residence, separate owner, yes.
And what number is that?
Do not know if I have the answer
Is
to
that
that.
the one that you said is in the right of way? Or that
Yeah,
has
I'm
an
not sure what
easement?
the address is on that, I apologize. But you're right, Bob, what you're seeing here in this top photo the barn-like looking building, you can see there's another structure behind it, and that's where there's another house behind that, which is accessed off of, you can see there's another driveway to the right of this owner's driveway. But it's approachable by both.
That's like the roof or something you can see, or what?
Correct, yeah.
And who determined that the 20.2 measurement, that was determined to be a rear setback, you said?
That was the building official.
I did have a conversation with Mr. Quinn about that, and he confirmed that if it's not a front, the front is the one on the street, it's not a side, it's gonna be a rear.
I've got a couple of questions. What do you call this type of house? Like contemporary? It's not certainly not a
Yeah,
colonial.
contemporary, modern, yeah.
It appears to me that you have, on this design, that you will have a stairway going up. Yeah. Stairway and then what, a ramp going up to the back? This is on the right side here, and then
Yes, there's
walk
a-
out on the third floor, take a stairway down to the second floor.
Right, it's tiered given the steep slope, but you go up to the right, that's a retaining wall to right there, so it is leveled out. And then there's stairs that take you up again to get to the back, so you can maybe see it on the floor plan here. So here you see, this is the main living level above the garage. There's the stairs on the right going up, and you can see the retaining wall going back behind the house. And then there's the stairs in the back to the left that get you up to that third level terrace.
Okay. With the, seems like you've got stairs all over the place and stuff, but sometimes if we approve, we put a little condition in there that this stay is a single family.
He doesn't have a problem with that at all, yes. That's
Okay.
the full intention of this, yes.
And just another one, if you can go to your plot plan, and this just might be from what the surveyor is doing there, but we have lines in the shaded areas, that just so we can see that, because they're the same color. For instance, I think that says 38 feet left to right, and 12.6.
Yes, those are the dimensions of the building
They're
footprint.
not crossed out dimensions,
No,
they're not,
no,
are they?
yeah. Yeah,
I don't think
I'm not
I've seen
sure
that
why he
before.
did that. No, that's the dimension of the structure. It's not meant to be crossed out.
Yeah. Because we tie our decisions and.
Yes.
Or the approval with these drawings and stuff, so I just want to double check. I think that's it, thank you.
Just a couple quick questions on the construction, standard construction, no blasting or anything like that.
It's my understanding that there is no ledge on the site, and given that the house has an existing foundation, that's why he's trying to keep that foundation at the rear and at the side. There's no intention in going further back. So if there was any ledge further back, there'd be no need to blast through that, so, no. And I think he'd be fine with the condition on that, and if for some reason they found some ledge or something that created there's other ways to deal with it besides blasting.
Let me ask, is there anyone in the audience who cares to be heard in connection with this request for variance and a special permit at 36 Wood Street? Sure, if you could approach. Hi.
Good evening, board. My name is Carlos Eduardo Silva, and I live at 3 Russell Drive, very close to where this project is going to be potentially happening. I personally don't have any issues with the variance that is being sought here, but I just want to point out a couple of things from the neighborhood because I'm actually the first mover at Russell Drive. This is a relatively new development in that area. And I see that house like every single day from my backyard. So my house really, like my backyard is actually, it is at the very limit on where this construction is gonna happen. So currently, this house, as you can probably see, is not livable. So there is a need to tear down completely. So, and I have a couple of concerns related to that because I already seen like a lot of rats infestation there. And another thing that is not appearing in these photos is like right next to the limit of my property and where the construction is going to happen, there's a huge tree that, depending on what's going to happen from a construction standpoint, this may not, it's going to destabilize the land, and maybe the tree is going to fall down to my
Where
property.
Is the tree on your property
No,
or
it's
this property?
that property.
Okay.
And of course, my neighbor that is next to me, he's also like have the same issue because we have a fence down there, and we are collectively afraid that if something's not gonna be done properly, this may affect, I mean, not only our backyard, but maybe like parts of our house that because the tree is really tall.
All right. I'm going to ask, could you go back to the pictures of Russo Drive so I could try to visualize this?
Oh, there it is there.
Okay, so which one is your house?
Oh, thank you, appreciate it. So, this is my house, and this is the tree that I'm talking about. And this is where the construction is gonna happen, but this is just the roof. So, the variance that is gonna be happening is gonna happen really between the tree and where the house is located currently. And it's usually this area was like completely full of rocks, and there was a lot of blasts, but I don't think that is gonna happen anymore. And I don't anticipate any issues on that, as really stated by the representative here. But this is definitely like one of my concerns, and also like any potential like rat infestations, things like that, because at the moment they will be tearing down all of that, they will go everywhere.
All right. So, Wolfer, I'll give you the opportunity to respond, and then I'll
Yeah,
throw my
I
questions in.
appreciate, thanks so
Oh,
much.
sure, of course.
Yes, completely understanding the concerns. Well, I think one is I guess the question that is the tree, it's behind the house, not directly to the side of the house, correct? Correct. Yeah. So I think given the location of where the house is, and if the tree is, back behind and to the left, there's no proposed construction back there. Certainly, we would agree to any condition to, ensure preservation and structural integrity of the tree, and if it needs to come down, we would take it down with no problem with a certified arborist and have it removed properly. Related to the demolition, yes, that certainly does happen sometimes, especially with a building that's been vacant. There can be rats or rodents. I believe typically the health department require, and there's usually a condition that when something is demoed, they have to do abatement before and also have monitoring during construction, and then have pest control go after and certify that everything is
Right, and
okay.
that's exactly what I was going to say. And so in other, and I can't remember if it's we've talked about this in the past, but that would be something, it's the standard practice, but that is something the board could also condition on as well. Is there anyone else who cares to be heard in connection with this petition?
I just have one final question for you. I'm just curious, why, I mean, it is in such dilapidated condition. You're going to basically raise the house, but you're only saving a small portion of the foundation. Why is that?
One, it lowers costs, and two, in order to have this be a pre-existing non-conforming structure, by preserving part of the structure being the foundation, that's why we're able to maintain that setback rather than being required to meet current code and push it back, which you can see would have a very narrow house.
Yeah, well, that was my follow-up question is, why not move it back? Then you'd meet the setback.
So certainly could move it back, but that's where we are requesting the variance, because it's our opinion that given the steep slope, the vegetation in the back, the amount of construction and work it would take to grade out and push the building back and build a new foundation would be a hardship for the new construction of the dwelling.
Yeah, because I was surprised to hear you say you don't think there's ledge back there. 'Cause just
I was too.
That's what I
looks to me like
I didn't
there is.
guarantee that.
Like, wow, because they were blasting over on
Right.
Russo Drive.
So, I mean, and that would be,
It was not identified to me. I have not
Hardship.
seen a geo report that shows there's ledge back there, but certainly that would be another hardship.
And did you, I don't see anything that has the actual, the elevations, but you had made a reference to the change in elevation, so could you repeat that for me?
Yeah, it was just from the side elevation of the architecturals. So there's a difference of, they have the first floor being this identified at a 0, the second floor at 15, and then the garage base floor at 8. So that's, a difference of over 23 feet. And given the length of the house is approximately 40 feet, you got almost a 50% slope there, just based on this plan.
All right, thank you. How does the board wish to proceed?
I will make a motion, so we've got a variance and
And a special, yeah.
So I'll make a motion to approve the special permit.
Second?
All in favor of the pending motion?
Aye.
Okay, special permit passes.
Then I'll make a motion to, and there may be other conditions, but I'll make a motion to approve the variance with the condition that this remain as a single-family home structure.
I'm going to second that, because I'm assuming there is ledge up there. The neighbor has ledge all over his property, and that would create a hardship for moving it back. I know I'm making some assumptions here, but, so I would second it.
Yes,
All right, let me ask, is
Just
there
on
anyone?
the motion,
Yeah.
there were some other, forgive me, I was
Is
fiddling.
there an interest in having a condition that an arborist examine the tree and that any recommendations by the arborist be followed?
yes.
Is there a interest in having a condition that the property be baited and before any demolition is done, and that the baits, I forget what they're called, the bait stations, are monitored throughout the construction? Or broaden it
I
to
didn't
say as
follow you.
required by the Board of Health?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Sure.
What was the second part of that? The Board of Health?
And comply with all Board of Health requirements. Member Parrish, as the moving member, are you amenable to those conditions?
I am.
And
Moved
mem-
if it's,
Yep. And then Member Ryan, as the seconding member, are you amenable to those conditions?
Yes,
All right, how does the board wish to proceed on the pending motion as amended to the variance? All in favor? All right, so that passed as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Have a good evening.
You're welcome. next item on our agenda is the petition of Elizabeth Farron, 204 Montvale Ave, seeking a special permit to build a second-story addition on a pre-existing non-conforming family home. Welcome, Mr. Tarby.
Yes, it's been a long night.
It has been. You've been very patient.
Attorney Joseph Tabby, on behalf of the petitioner Elizabeth Farron, who's here this evening with her husband. They're seeking a special permit under Section 7.3 of the zoning ordinance to allow for the construction of a full second floor on the existing non-conforming single-family dwelling, as was shown on the plans filed with the petition. The dwelling is non-conforming because it does not meet the required lot size, street frontage, and side yard setbacks. The existing lot size is 10,946 square feet, where 12,000 square feet is required. Street frontage is 63.88 feet, where 100 feet is required. And one of the side yard setbacks is 8.3, where 12 is required. The other setback is 18.3 feet. With this application, we submitted an existing conditions plan, a site plan showing the new proposed dwelling, elevation plans, and the aerial view. So in this particular case, the building footprint will not change at all, except for a small entryway at the front of the building. The house that will be located 29.4 feet from the front lot line. Other than that, the footprint does not change. So according to the assessor's office and the records in the Department of Inspectional Services, the original house was built in 1947, and as a result of the 1985 dimensional regulations, it's non-conforming, as I indicated, as to minimum lot size, street frontage, and side yard setbacks. Petitioner plans to remain in the home with their family and their 14-month-old daughter. The existing house has a full dormer on the rear of the home, and as their family is expanding, they'd like to construct a full second floor that really results in a larger master bedroom and one additional bedroom. The first floor of the dwelling will remain the same with the living room, kitchen, dining room, office, and full bath. The second floor, as I said, will contain one additional bedroom for a total of 3 bedrooms and a full bathroom. So we did submit an aerial. If you look at the surrounding neighborhood, the addition of the full second floor will not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming use. Many of the homes in that area are 1 to 1.5 stories to 2 to 2.5 stories. This dwelling will not have any impact on traffic volume, traffic congestion, on the municipal water supply, sewage capacity, noise, odor, scale, character, and visual effect. So the proposal by the petitioner will not be substantially more detrimental than the legal existing non-conforming use. And on behalf of petitioner, I'd request approval of the special permit application.
Thank you, Mr. Tarby. Is there anyone in the audience who cares to be heard in connection with this request for a special permit at 204 Montvale Ave? How does the board wish to proceed?
Make a motion to approve the special permit.
Second.
All in favor? All right, that passed. Thank you. I have to say, this looks beautiful. I don't often comment, but it looks really nice, so good luck.
Good for the architect to hear that. Yeah.
All right, it looks beautiful. All right, good luck. You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, the next item in our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from our January meeting. I left the, I just had made one correction, and I apologize because I didn't tell Mr. Vincent that
No, I
I
saw
just
it.
left it there.
I saw it.
I don't know if anybody else has any comments or additions.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended by the chair.
Second.
All in favor? All right, those minutes are approved. The next item on our agenda is the discussion of our application, and this is the glacial, glacial effort that we have on trying to tweak our petitions to make them more user-friendly. And I want to thank Member Ryan again for spearheading this effort. So we had tweaked, I think it was the special permit application most recently. And Mr. Vincent was kind enough to share that with the building commissioner, and we're sending it to the city solicitor. The building commissioner has already
Yes, he's,
given us feedback and comments. If anybody else has any, obviously, we welcome those, but I think we're actually making progress in creating new forms that are much better than what we have. And I think and I hadn't gone back to look at it, but I think two of the forms that we have now, the new one makes one of them redundant, so I think we'll be able to do away with one of our forms in favor of the new one. But it's been a while since I looked at the old ones yet, so, or again. But in any event, so they're out for review. And my expectation is that our next meeting in March, which we still need to set, although I understand people are gonna be out, but that we would be in a position to now say, yes, everyone's looked at them, commented on them, do we want to adopt them?
We're probably going to be in the same situation with the city solicitor, though, who's going to review
Well,
them.
yeah, so, but.
Hopefully Ellen
I
can.
thought it
Yeah.
might be helpful to have, I mean, Ellen's gonna, both of them, because Ellen,
Right.
I think she's anxious to do this, and then when you have the new city solicitor,
Right.
he's been on the other side of the rail,
Yep,
so maybe his
absolutely,
input might be helpful.
yeah, the more the merrier.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that's it for that update. And I'm not aware of any other matters before the board, so I would, so our next meeting is going to be, I've forgotten already what I had said.
March 20, was it?
March 10th, I thought.
No, that was the
No, that was
April.
it.
Sorry,
That was the April meeting.
I thought April 10th, yeah.
Or is it two meetings in April?
March 20th and April 10th, right?
Correct.
There's gonna be a meeting on March 20th? Okay.
Yeah, our regular March meeting, and then we'll
Okay.
have kind of a quick turnaround for April.
Okay.
You're here on the 20th,
I'm
right?
here on the 20th,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. Okay,
I
so.
thought somebody,
I thought somebody was gonna.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah,
okay.
but Richard
Yeah.
won't be here, but we'll have,
All
hopefully that
Yeah.
our new member will.
well, she's here right now, so.
Oh, hi, welcome. Sorry, I didn't know that. I wished I'd known that. So yeah, we're gonna have a meeting on March 20th.
Yep.
Okay. It's not in mine yet. All right, CBA.
So April 10th, but
So
not.
April 10th and March 20th. Okay.
They're not always this much fun.
Okay, all right. So, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn, until March 20th?
So moved. Second.
I think that was a
Just on the motion, I just want to thank you for your kind words about Ned earlier today. Well spoken on behalf of all of us.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's the least we could do.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, well, I'll go off the record. Yeah, least we could do.
Thank you.
Okay, so having all in favor of the motion to adjourn?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned until the